All right, welcome back to the build video, everybody. Just like last time, I'm going to answer a couple questions. So one person was wondering what parts were going on the bike, a parts list, and one was wondering what handlebars. So here are the handlebars. Here's a snippet of the motorsport.com website that I got one of the sets from. As far as the parts go, this is just my overall, I try to stay organized doing a full season of Motor America. Scheduling out my transportation between school, selling my old bike, maintaining sponsorships, planning out my gear, designing it, team shirts, budget for the year, pricing out fuel and tires I plan to spend throughout all 5 rounds, the season entry, etc. But as far as the build itself, here you go. Here's your parts list. That's pretty much everything I've bought for the bike and putting on or have put on already. Most of these are sponsorship orders where I got good discounts from the people supporting me. Some of them, I saved money where I could, like this Facebook purchase here. But aside from that, here's where, I bought my bike, a used 22 with 699 miles on it with the tech pack. Here are things I may plan to do later in the season, suspension and motor work. Here's all the Monterey Peninsula Power Sports gives me a good discount on power parts from KTM. So here are the green items that I've purchased through them. But aside from that, here's some Super Hooligan rulings I'm making sure I abide by, and whatever parts I'm getting, I'm putting on the bike is all legal. But yeah, if you have any questions on this, let me know. Other than that, yeah, here's the total price of the build if you were curious. Bike purchase with spare parts. So other than that, let's get into the build. All right, just to speed this up, I'm going to commentate over this and go to the live audio when I'm saying something pertinent. Just doing the engine sliders here to help protect the bike a little bit better. This is done for the Akrapovic exhaust, power plate, and T4 VP fuel will be running in Motor America. So that was just me explaining what the EDR performance tune was on the Power Commander 5, tune for the mods I have on the bike currently. Blocking off the ABS pump, and that's the side stand delete. Most of these on the Power Commander 5 are inline fittings, so that's the inline for the crank positioning sensor. And I'll explain all this, but this is the universal ground going in. And then I posi tapped the electronic throttle control. So let's double check everything, make sure we have everything connected that we need to or disconnected. So for the Power Commander, we have throttle positioning sensor tapped with both wires, crankshaft position sensor inline done, inline for both injection coils. Done and done, ground done, and 2 inline fuel injectors done. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 fuel tank connections, minus the 1 tube that we deleted from the canister system. And then we have the ABS pump blocked off, deleted for that matter. 2 O2 sensors removed, and the horn removed as well. And I think that's it. And of course all the ABS lines are gone as well. So I think we are home free to button all this up, put a couple zip ties in here, mat it all down, put this guy back on, tuck those wires in, find a final resting home for the Power Commander line, Velcro the Power Commander, put the tank back on, plug the ECU back in, plug the rectifier and whatever this was back in, and get everything back on. All right, as I just explained, we're just going to go ahead and put the fuel tank back on. Now I'm taking a break from all that, and we're working on some safety wiring. So I like to cover these with hoses with little C-clamps on there so you can quickly remove and reattach them so you don't have to actually manually safety wire it every time, which ends up being really handy. Safety wiring the coolant drain and the oil fill plug. Oil fill plug in the same fashion, I put a clamp on there. I also decided to safety wire the O2 sensor bungs. Now moving on to some gearing. Removing the stock rear sprocket and chain. Then I went ahead and torqued my rear axle, and I drilled out a hole so I can safety wire it. So I torque it one time, safety wire it, and then I just line those holes up every time I put the rear wheel back on, so it makes it nice and easy. I know that it's at the right torque. And put another clip on there. Getting the new chain installed. I end up taking a break from this as well because I hate braking and reattaching chains, so I move on to graphics. Graphics from Drippin' Wet. Chris did a really awesome job getting the graphics set up. They're not exactly perfect, and I need to send him some feedback on that, but they ended up looking really sick in my opinion. And here I skipped a bunch of this, but I essentially very jankily put my bike up on a stand so that I could take the front stand off to remove the front forks because I had an unplanned purchase. Andy DeBrino hooked me up with a KTM Power Part triple clamp, so I'm going to go ahead and get that installed. So just removing all the stock stuff. I already took the handlebars off. There goes the top triple clamp. Pulled the rest of the triple out. And then took another break because I realized I needed to order another bearing set. So I'm reattaching riveting the chain here, and we're all good there. Got an R&G slider protector for the Acura exhaust. And now here I'm going to put on the toe guard for the chain that's required. Nice and easy. And I'm going to reattach the chain guard as well, just to kind of protect from all the crap spewing up on the bike itself. Now this little thing, I actually broke this green plug. I forget if it was in a previous video, but I finally got it.
There it is. I was just being a sissy. Oh my gosh. We did it. Okay. You know what? Thank goodness.
So you can see how happy that made me. That was a contentious point for me, right when I thought I was done with all the wiring and electric stuff. But finally able to button all this up with that clamp that I purchased and put a new one on.
Boom. Hey. Volume should be turned down. Based on your headphone usage over the last 7 days, you've exceeded the recommend. Shut up. You don't know me. You're only strapped to my wrist 24/7. This actually came in handy for me one time. Oh, it's plastic though, and it's probably just gonna break over that. But hey, I will give it a shot. Yeah. Man. You ready for this stroke of genius? That was a joke, by the way. That's right. Ha ha ha. Oh man, I hope none of my mechanic friends are watching this. But guess what? It's on there. And it's flush. Thank you for your service, sir. Duly noted. You, sir? I'm so sorry. Looks like you'll still work though.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get creative when you don't have all the right tools. But finally got the new bearings in. So we're getting the Power Part triple installed.
Sliding the forks back in. Making sure to torque everything down correctly. Now I'm reinstalling the steering dampener arm onto the bottom of the triple. And getting the handlebars put back on. Once all that was buttoned up, I was pretty anxious to get the front stand back on so I could take off these crazy car jack stands I had holding my bike up. It wasn't the most secure thing in the world. And putting the front wheel back on. Now I'm going to move on to some brake pads. Your normal set of street pads will wear just like any other pad, but they will give you an uneven brake feel. What that means is when you're reaching for the brake every time coming down, a start straight or really any hard braking, your lever is going to come closer and closer to your handlebar until eventually you're going to pull it to your knuckles and have an oh poop moment because the bike's not slowing down. The brakes have overheated. The materials that these are made out of, usually some kind of sintered compound, are just, they don't withstand the continuous heat cycles that you put them through when you're hard braking all the time. So we go to something like a dual carbon, or dual sintered, or there's a bunch of different, there's a few different higher compounds out there, and each company kind of makes their own version of them. But essentially, these will give you a more even brake feel, a more consistent brake feel, and they don't fade hardly whatsoever. Maybe a little bit, but these also have a higher, because of their higher temperature operating range, they take longer to heat up. So that's why you don't really want these when you're just riding around on the street, because you'll go for the brake lever and it'll be the same condition as these guys worn out when these aren't up temperature, if that makes sense. So these do require, to get some heat in them. That's why you see like MotoGP or any kind of street racing, they'll be grabbing the front brake or doing stoppies right as they get up to the start finish to grid up for a race, because they want to make sure they have that good hard braking feel on the lever as soon as they hit turn one. On episode 263 of not knowing what I'm doing, this doesn't come off. Monoblock, no pins holding in the brake pads, so they actually just pop out. All right, so you just have to make space within the pistons and they literally fall out, which is pretty awesome. Don't have to deal with pins. It's one less moving part. Oh, yeah, brake fluid. Right. There's still some of that in there. Okay, there we go. One out. Two out. We will save these. Got a little more room there. All right, now that that's all done, we're going to move on to getting some fairing pieces back on the bike. Starting with the main cowl over the fuel tank. Moving on to the side pieces. This side holds the coolant overflow tank. Popping the seat and rear cowl back on. Now it's starting to look like a bike again. I think the graphics turned out pretty awesome. Gonna go ahead and get some of the final pieces put on the bike up on the top of the fuel tank. Now moving on to some more safety wiring. This is the oil filter plug or cap. Now I'm working on the belly pan. The graphics don't cover everything, and it was a white belly pan, so I ended up just putting a bunch of black vinyl over the white spaces. Now I'm heating up some tank grips to put on there, clear, so it doesn't disrupt the flow of the graphics. Putting on some domino grips. I hate putting on grips. It's horrible. I always safety wire mine. I have a death grip on the handlebars, so I don't like them spinning around or anything. So I usually put 2 or 3 pieces of safety wire on there just to hold them in place. Now moving on to some brake lines. These are Core Moto custom brake lines, courtesy of Zeb at Pit Lane Moto. The banjo bolts actually didn't end up fitting in my calipers and master cylinders, so I had to use the stock ones, which is no big deal. Rerouting the front line up through the stock position that it was routed. Getting everything connected up. You see I zip tied it to the front fork there. Didn't really want it under as it was in the stock position where I can't put the front stand on there. Got some new caps in, or clamps, for the controls that eliminate the mirror block off. Put another piece of tank grip on there in the center. And here I'm just bleeding the brakes out, filling them and bleeding them. Refilling as I go. Got the calipers done, and then I'm finishing up here with the master cylinder up top. And then the same treatment for the rear brake line. I did get the side plates installed. We'll see if this one wants to actually stay on there, but it seems pretty secure. Yes, I drilled it straight into my RNG exhaust protector, but you know. And then this side I actually built a little bracket out of metal, connected it to actually an exhaust bracket, an extra that I had from the stock exhaust. And bolted that there, and that's nice and secure as well. I don't have the actual number plate for that side because it went on my wall little collage thing I made. So right now I'm working on this last throttle grip that is the bane of my existence. The throttle tube I ordered from KTM finally came in, and in their infinite wisdom, it comes with another grip freaking gorilla glued to it, which, yeah, that was super exciting to find out. But I need this anyway for the spare handlebar. We'll put that on, and we'll probably just run that stock grip because I'm not doing this twice. All right, so I finally finished cleaning up this stupid throttle tube. I hope I never crash the bike on the right side so I don't have to replace that. Just checking the controls here, making sure everything's where I want it. The oil cooler finally came in. I think from Sweden is where they source these. But awesome piece, well worth the wait. So we're going to go ahead and dump the oil from the bike. This is the oil filter coming out. Very unique design from any other bike I've owned. You know, Japanese bikes primarily, but 2 oil drain plugs from the side with little filters in them. It's all pretty well engineered and kind of impressive to me, but definitely different than what I'm used to. You can see how clean the oil is just being such a new bike. Going to go ahead and take that opportunity to put a new filter in. I had to drain the coolant as well because the stock heat exchanger that we're replacing with the oil cooler uses coolant to cool the oil. So we go ahead and pop that guy off. So yeah, we'll be removing the oil pan and the oil pump to put a small little spacer in there to increase the oil pressure so that it can feed, obviously, it can feed this oil cooler adequately. Sick! This turned into a job and a half. So, popped the exhaust off, took my belly pan clamps off of the oil pan, dropped the oil pan bolts, made myself a little diagram once I noticed all the bolts were not the same size, just to make sure we don't get those confused going back in. And we've broken the belly pan loose a little bit, so we should be seeing it come off here. It's dripping a little bit more oil, which is fine. But there she goes. All right. So as you heard there, a little bit more involved process than I thought it would be, but that's okay. Popping the oil pump off, and then just kind of attacking it, looking for where this little spacer goes to increase the oil pressure, because I didn't really know. So just kind of pulling stuff off, and I finally found it. It's just this little washer that you indent, relieve the pressure on the spring, pull the washer out, and then you see here, that's the little fitting that goes on there to give you a little bit more oil pressure through that pump. And then just reverse the process, putting the oil pump back on.
There it goes. Nice and easy.
Put the oil pan back on, and then I assembled the actual oil cooler itself with all the AN fittings and the mounting plate. Ended up taking the mounting plate off to put it in first, in between the exhaust there. This is, it's got one motor mount on the side just to hold it in place. Really tight tolerances in here, but was able to get everything connected just fine. Buttoned everything up, safety wired a few things. So we have the belly pan back on. I do have the safety wire for both the drain plugs, safety wired together, as well as safety wire back on the oil filter plug or cap. Got all the AN fittings tightened down, the exhaust is tightened down. Safety wire to the coolant drain plug instead of the exhaust bung here. So just a little bit cleaner to stay off the exhaust. And then I've since refilled my distilled water. Cap is still off. We're gonna have to burp the system all over again, which is fine. And then I'm currently just finishing up filling the bike with oil. One benefit, we should be able to hold a little bit more oil capacity in the bike now that the speed box is gonna be running oil through it. So the coolant capacity of the bike is just expanded a little bit because it's having to run it through this cooler and these lines. So, all right, so let's go and fire her up. We are going to keep an eye on the coolant, burp the system, keep an eye on the sight glass to see how much, if any, oil we suck in through the oil cooler, see if the oil pressure light goes off. And then we're also just kind of generally looking around the the oil pan area to check for any leaks, check all the connections for the oil cooler, etc. Okay, so went over everything. Things seem to be working okay. Nothing is spewing fluid, nothing's leaking. I did need to top off the oil once I turned the bike off, and you can actually read what the sight glass is saying. It was quite low, so I added probably almost another quart. So that oil cooler is definitely doing its job. I reattached the ABS dongle in the rear cowl here. We'll see if that does anything to the lights up top. I'm just going to take it around the block just to run the bike under its own power, see how everything does, see if any more idiot lights pop up. Once I get back, re-inspect everything, making sure everything is tight, nothing came loose, nothing's leaking, and make sure we're at least in a more decent spot than I can say when it's just been on the stand its entire life. Taking it to a track day and having, surprises, something simple I could have fixed at home. So let's go ahead and do it. So those lights went out with the ABS dongle, so that's good. Just have the check engine light, which I was told is going to happen with the tune that's on the bike. All right, well, yeah, this thing is sick. Holy. All right. Well, that gives me a lot more confidence going to my first track day, because that module, I think, took care of pretty much everything that was happening on the dash there. So launch control was working. Obviously, I tested that out a couple times. The shifter's not very responsive. I'm also in my Nike Freeze, so that didn't help. But you know, the shifts were kind of a little bit wonky. The quick shifter and the auto blip still working, but I think it's has to do more with the low throw of this shift lever right now, because I don't have the trans saver in yet. It's night and day, the power difference when I took that first ride with it bone stock, just with an intake, exhaust, and tune. So super happy, super excited to get this thing on track and really see what it's worth. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap on the bike build. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know it was a long one, but we got there, and I'll see you guys out on track, and hopefully put up some decent showings in the Super Hooligan series in Moto America.